like every Thursday we have our shows where we would come on have conversations because Sean and I were on the route of health and life coaching. So we
Right.
wanted to build a platform where there's a safe space, amongst everyone. We could have conversations with life and health and
Absolutely.
different things. And so this week, I felt that because it's Men's Mental Health Month, that we
Yeah.
should kind of have conversations that are men related and see where it goes. So tonight, you know, it's about men and their emotions,
Okay.
and it's unspoken rules where men are taught about emotion because I
Yeah.
feel like we don't really talk enough about that.
Yeah.
A lot of men, um, they're taught to hold it in, tough it out, and keep it moving, but at what cost?
Hmm.
Tonight, we're here with our guest, Jeff. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for coming on. We want to explore the silent rules, the emotional weight men carry, and how we build spaces where vulnerability isn't just allowed, but it's respected. And so, this conversation is for all of us
Yeah.
because healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in a safe space, which is here.
Hmm.
All right, so let's get into it.
Dive into it. Well, I'm a product of the growing up in the 70s. So
Okay.
um, that I was fortunate to have two great mentors, my mom and dad. So I had that. My dad was very sportsy, so we were rough and tumble, and we were into hockey, and we did all the Canadian boys type of things. But I had a mom that also taught us how to cook, how
Hmm.
to clean, and they had a vision of us going off to university and being a little bit self-sufficient if we could. And so I was lucky to have that dual home where I could experience uh, being that boy because you
Hmm.
were a in the 70s you were a boy, um, and you just naturally took on that role. But if you had that mother that could provide the other side, then you were fortunate because you got a perspective of how to have emotions.
Hmm.
What
Okay.
happened was that after I finished my degrees and finished my teacher's college, and I became a behavioral specialist, um, in the late 80s, early 90s, things shifted a bit. And boys, they weren't getting that. There was a lot of single parent families. There was a lot of different family dynamics that weren't happening back when I grew up,
Hmm.
and they were getting away from showing their emotions and being emotional and growing up to be young adults and then adults with this dual teaching, if you want to call it, to be able to show those emotions, sir. And I was a very emotional person, and I always wanted to talk about my feelings. And I always, if something bothered me socially or relationship wise or work wise, I had a good avenue of friends. I Because we formed these boys to men, there was a lot of young teachers in my first few years that we formed this group.
Hmm.
And so I had a lot of teachers my age, and there was mentors within that group too that were older teachers that took us in and gave us a lot of um, help in the emotions of teaching, because it was a female dominated profession. And but the males, they had to learn that they could have emotions and they could talk about them, and about their job, and about kids and about their feelings. So I was pretty lucky, and that's why I took on a greater mentorship
Yeah.
and became the person to talk to and have the number. Like, you could call me anytime. I just that became my passion, was to work with mental health and behavior, and
Mm.
really I had success, a lot of success. My major success was with teenagers. I specialize in teenagers, and getting them to talk and having round table groups with them. And I ran a program for about 7 years where I brought troubled teens in, boys and girls, and most of the day we talked, and I gave them an avenue to get those feelings out. And that's where I noticed, probably in the 2000s, early 2000, late 90s to early 2000s, mid 2000s, where they weren't getting that avenue. They weren't talking enough. There was a lot of violence. We were seeing a greater percentage of violence in the schools, violence outside, how to handle things with violence. And we really tried to tackle that as this group of Boys to Men and mentorship and future ACEs. And we had a lot of programs that, we even set up programs where we taught kids how to mentor kids, and teenagers how to mentor teenagers, so that they could talk to them and get those emotions out. Because with the changing dynamics of just boys and girls, and what we're seeing today, I'm not expert on all that part, but there was a dynamic that first it was boys that weren't able to get this emotion out,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of females that were going underground with cyberbullying and things like that, and it was escalating to
Yeah.
a point where we needed outlets.
Hmm. No, that's phenomenal actually, because for me, I grew up in quite the opposite environment. Like for me, it was more the suck it up, tough it out, build a bridge and get over it. Like, you know what I mean? So these were all the things that were told to me. Um, I'm
And
I'm
I
I'm gonna
think
guess, but
you're what we were hitting. We were
mhm,
hitting that roadblock, and we were trying all these things. Go ahead. I just wanted to
yeah.
say that was a big thing. Probably, I'm not sure how old you are, but I think you're in that time where we were talking about
Mhm.
where it was devastating to see
What
boys, young
did you work
boys.
at one of the schools in Jane and Finch?
Yeah,
Which one?
Yorkwoods.
Yorkwoods. Okay. I think you kind of answered, but one of the questions that I wanted to ask was who did you look up to more so as like a real man? Like for me growing up, I'll just say I did have my dad in the home, but I had two older brothers as well, sorry. And for me, like I looked up more so to my oldest brother than even my dad. And like everything that he did, I wanted to do. Everything that he's now good at, I'm for the most part good at as well. Who was
My
that person for you?
my dad was my greatest mentor, and to this day, he's
Hmm.
83 now, and he's a prominent figure in my life. My big brother, I only have one brother, and that's the family there, two of us. And my big brother was, he became like the assistant captain of mentoring in probably when I reached about 18 or 19, because before that we were very competitive, and he was the older brother, and we were both very good in sports, and we both challenged each other there, but he was always older. He got more of the accolades. I was always trying to catch my big brother thing. But I when we hit university, it was my brother that I sought out. When my emotions couldn't handle, because I was the baby, I couldn't. I moved away to London, Ontario, to go to the University of Western Ontario,
Hmm.
and I couldn't handle that distance and being away from my mom. And I had a lot of feelings for my mom, and my mom was my caretaker, caregiver. My she had the fortitude to handle the emotions of the youngest, and that distance for me was hard to do school, cook and clean everything she had taught me to do on my own, live on my own. And I came home after my first half year and told them I was quitting university. I couldn't be this far away. I was failing in some things. And it was actually my brother who pulled me aside and said, he was at home going to university, and he said, you're no further away if you try and finish this year. If you're failing now, you'll be failing at the end of the year, but maybe you won't. Let's talk about it. And he became more of my go-to for feelings and emotions and things like that. It wasn't my dad that I could count on. So, dad overall, brother at a certain point, and then we really
Yeah.
developed, and we both went into education.
So
So,
sorry. So I was gonna say, so you grew up in an environment where you did have that outlet where you could talk about how you felt about things, like you could
absolutely,
be open
absolutely.
about.
That was one lucky thing, because to preface all that, I was an army brat, and I went to 14 public schools and 4 high schools in 4 different countries. And so, yeah, I had to be a chameleon all of my life, because we never lived anywhere more than 3 or 4 years at a time, and then we would
Mhm.
move. And there was a lot of emotions that went with that. And my mom was a strong believer in getting those out, and having you not bottle those up. And so
Mhm.
I was lucky to have that mentorship from her. Um, but I think what happened was, move forward. I was better able to counsel and handle that later when I got into my teaching career, because I had a really good foundation in that. Not everybody does, and I get that, and that's where the issues came in, and that's where my strength became as a behavioral specialist, was to delve into that, because I had a really good foundation, but now I had something to, and I happened to grow up part of my life in the Caribbean. So where I was now at Jane and Finch, I was in a dominant Caribbean culture in
Right.
the late '80s, early '90s, and I was able to take that perspective, because I had just come from living for the last 4 years in the Caribbean, and bring it into my teaching. And yeah, I was getting this snowball of and plethora of experience, and I needed to get it out there, and it helped me with my career immensely.
Hmm. So when with you, because you grew up in such an open environment, how did you do things like if you're having a bad day, how did you show it? Like what sort of things did you do?
When I was younger, uh, we always had family dinner at 5, no matter
Mhm.
what. We always sat around the table at 5, and we went with that old, the '60s kind of. We never left that. We sat around, and we were encouraged to talk more than just, how was your day at school?
Mhm.
The real
Yeah.
pad questions. My parents more, they jumped into it a little bit more. They could, because they knew us, and I think most parents do. All my work with parents, and parents often really do know parents their kids really well, but they don't know the right questions to ask, and then they hit those pad answers. How was school? Fine.
Mhm.
What'd you do? And you got all those. My parents went a little bit deeper, because they could see on us, we wore our emotions on our sleeves. They could see if we were having a good or bad day, and nobody was ever in my family afraid to ask what's going on, deeper than just
Mhm.
the topical questions.
So Jeff, with this being, an emotional, like just finding out the dynamics with men and emotions and trying to find the answer to it, with me being like obviously the only woman on this podcast with two men, I have a question for both of you guys actually that maybe you can answer. So myself as a woman, I could kind of understand your side and where you're coming from.
Mhm.
Um, which is, if you, what's something that you would want or wish women would understand a little bit more about the emotional lives of men?
I would say to help you out is that we have to teach men and women that you can't and this is going to sound odd, but you can't always speak emotionally. You have to speak logically, and when you speak logically, you speak truth, and you don't let heavy emotion get into the emotion that you're trying to explain. And what we often have in dynamics, especially in relationships, is that we have conflict, especially with men to women, is that men often speak very logically, women often speak very emotionally. And I think we need to bring a more combo where you, the bigger side of talking about feelings and about what's inside you and what you want to get out should be the logical things, because the logical things tell what your emotions are. The logical things will allow you to center, I believe, on the root problem or the root emotion that you're talking about. When you get too much into emotions, it gets all skewed up because out comes these dynamics that
That's true.
but I believe that's a start of if you just look at behavior. And I know for me, and I speak for me only, if I had a partner that I was with, they often disliked me in these kind of situations because I never argued or talked heavy or had uh, let's say a dispute about something emotionally. I always talked logic. And that's hard to talk back to somebody who only comes at you with logic and no emotion, because emotion um, brings everything, like it enhances everything. And I think that you can get more of your emotions out when you speak about the logic of what's going on. If I want you to know why I'm sad inside, I want to give you the logical reason why I'm sad inside, and talk to you that way, and not talk to you about all the things that can make me sad and all the things that have made me sad. But I think you can talk emotions, and it's a funny way to think about it. I think for people is to eliminate emotion and more logic. And
Yeah.
I
Uh-huh. Sorry.
I don't think everybody's good at it, but that's my take on it.
Yeah, I feel like it's a woman's thing. Like it doesn't matter like what month you were born or whatever. That's
Yeah.
just women. Like we just.
I'll give you a little story. I had a partner call me one time, called the office of my school, and needed to get a hold of me. And when they got me out of my class and I got to the phone, I thought it was a real emergency because I was pulled out of my class to talk to my partner at that point. And my partner said to me, I said, "What's going on? What happened?" And my partner said, "Why did you leave the garage door open?" And I went, oh, and I didn't want to get into an emotional outburst, and I said, well, of course I wanted the raccoons to move in and have a safe place to live, but it was that emotion that really was going to trigger something big if I didn't handle it the right way. And I think that's just a little um, snapshot of how emotions, and if they're not dealt with on both sides properly, can
Mhm.
really explode, and then people shut down, and then they don't talk about. I could have got really mad because I was pulled out of class. I thought there was one of the kids might have been hurt or
Family
something.
emergency. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just was very, why did you do that? And because I think so logically, I didn't want to give a smart ass answer, and I think that that's the thing about emotions that uh, there needs to be more training in is if you can centralize where I guess what I'm encompassing is that more emotions can be explored by both people if the proper way of communicating those emotions happens. And I think it gets really blown out of proportion because people don't know how to, and men especially shut down, and they get mad in a different way,
Right.
and
What?
then they're taught not to get mad and don't get mad and careful how mad you get, and then there's a stigma of how mad the man should get, and we have to teach you boys that you don't have to. You can be angry things, and you can be verbal about them, but there's a way to go about it that you don't have to hold it in.
Right.
Because the difference between a man holding something in for a long time and a woman holding something in for a long time is really different when they both explode,
Right. Right.
I think.
How about you, Sean? What's something that you'd want or you'd wish women understood a little bit more about
It's
emotional lives of men?
I don't know if it's so much about the emotional lives of men, more so than just and I don't want to say it like so hard, but like to us, at least to me, because I'm very logical, and you know this with the way I speak. Um, in most dealings, I find emotions aren't real. Like somebody can't tell you something that is an actual fact, and then you say, "But I think," or "But I feel."
Hmm.
Cares? It's not so. So that's the one for me. It's like you can't combat fact with what you feel. And
Yeah,
I
I
find
agree.
that that's where frustration starts to leak in, because you're like, how can we move further in this conversation if you're literally taking out a bat and just knocking away fact and telling me that, oh, this is what I think and this is what I feel.
Yeah.
I
That
think
that's
it's an expressive. Emotions are an expressive way to and a false way to approach something that could be approached a lot better by both sexes. Could do that,
Mhm.
and women, I think, could understand that um, the their men's emotional capacity is quicker lost than
Yeah.
a woman's emotional capacity to stay in something when you're discussing something. And I think men shut down, and I think we need to allow men to not shut down, but be more educated in how to keep it, uh, in a realm where what Sean said was like, idiocy comes in, and you lose focus to what's going on, because emotions are nobody has an answer to emotions.
Right.
Or I would have been writing my seventh book on it or something now, and it's been the hardest thing to do is put behavior and emotions and thoughts and how you deal with things um, in a way that is, I don't know if you remember the handbooks for dummies. They used to send those out years and years ago. It was for mechanics or plumbing or,
Yeah.
well, if you could write uh, a handbook for emotions or a handbook for behavior, it would be really more cut and dry than what comes in now.
right.
It's
Hmm.
I just think that um, depending on what you want, either person, the male or the female, what you want, is how you approach it. If you approach it really heavily, if women approach things that they want to get to, like the why is the garage open? That's an open invitation for a lot of emotion.
Hmm.
And really, if you and I'll say this, men aren't the greatest at handling the emotional side of things because they've been taught over time to suppress them, suck it up, like Sean
Yeah.
said, suck it up. Don't show that emotion, don't show that weakness. And I think a lot of wrong words are attributed to what emotions are. They're very more complex than just you know the old aging things that describe them. They're very complicated.
Hmm.
Okay. So, so how has your relationship with emotions changed, you think, as you got older?
I'm a very chilled guy, and as you know, uh, I've most of my adult life I've been in a mixed relationship,
Yeah.
and so um, cultures, and I've learned more about cultures, and I've learned more of. I always had to stay for 30 years in my profession very calm. I'm a de-escalation specialist and a de-stressing specialist. So I I self-taught, and then I had a lot of good mentors in that world that it became a natural thing for me. But if you wanna encapsulate, like I've been retired now for 10 years, I'm so much more chilled now. My gait is the way I walk is even slower. The just the what I allow to make me emotional is almost disappeared. And I
Hmm.
try to be very stress free, um simply because my environment allows that now. I do a lot of a small business of mentoring and behavior management. I still give um, help to moms that have teenage problems, and a lot of that deals with emotions. You,
Yeah.
you would laugh that um, when you look at a situation like for instance, for you would be, I had a mom that was having problems with her teenage son. She had a problem with uh, the way that he did the chores that she asked him to do. And what was simply happening was he was doing them, but he wasn't doing them to her capacity as a mom and as an adult and as a higher learner. And her emotions came out strongly negative when he did do something. If he did the dishes, it wasn't done the right way. If he took the garbage out, it wasn't done the right way. So he shut down. He wouldn't speak to her about it. He wouldn't talk to her, and he wouldn't tell her what was, and it became an argument. And it didn't take me long to get in there and figure out that um, he never got any accolades for getting it done. And I think that's a main
That's
point
the
is
tough
that,
love part.
yeah, and never rewarded for doing the things right or doing the things themselves, whatever that chore may be,
Hmm.
and then at a quieter time or a less stressed time, say, next time you're doing the dishes, do you mind putting these ones to drip dry and wipe these ones down because they'll get spots on them, if just little hints instead of they're done wrong right after, an emotion comes out, and then the small little conflict becomes a big emotional problem. Now they've got big emotions coming out, and so I think I think that's a strong, part of it.
Okay, and it's an open question because, like, I want to learn. I enjoy learning different things about men, things that I may be oblivious to because I'm just used to living my regular female life.
Hmm.
So, the question goes to you, Sean, too. Like, How has your emotions changed, do you think, throughout the years of you getting older, if it has? I know a little bit of what you might say, but I'll hear
Mhm.
from you
How my emotions have changed.
throughout the
Um,
years as you got older. Yeah.
I mean, I've definitely gotten more in tune with them. Like I recognize them more. I I think more before I say things than I did before. Um, and I like now, like I definitely know what I'm doing now. Like if I'm saying something, I get the impact of it. So rarely, if we're if we're in an argument, so to speak, and I throw up the air quotes for arguments because anybody that knows Latanya and I knows that the way that we interact, it's hardly ever an argument because I recognize that the whole point of an argument is I'm just trying to force my opinion, my side, my feelings down the other person's throat. Um, so I just try my hardest not to do that now. So like that's what I mean when I say I recognize what I'm doing. So I recognize to slow down and let me hear the other person's side first, and then I'll go.
Well, it's normally one person or the other that starts a so-called heavy discussion or argument, and they
Hmm.
do it to evoke emotions.
Hmm.
And they usually, and if you think about it, if you were to sit down and write down, and we did do some studies on trigger words. Trigger words are always placed in an emotional confrontation between two people, and they're trigger words that they evoke emotion that is usually negative. And the person that's seemingly starts something, they
Hmm.
go quickly to the trigger words to invoke emotion out of the other person, because emotion from one to the other validates how the other can come back at you. And
Hmm.
people need an escape on why um, um, they can validate what they're doing. So they'll say something to
Hmm.
trigger a response. And what I like about what Sean said was that he thinks more about it, because if you think more about it, then you won't give. We had an analogy of, if you look at this, if you have two tennis players playing tennis and they knock the ball back and forth to each other right in the middle of the court, it would be very boring. But if the ball is hit to you in the middle and you serve it to the corner, they have to run to get it. If they
Hmm.
get it and get it back, they usually get it back into the center, and then they send it to the other corner, and they have to run to get it. And so the more you make somebody that started something run to get their answers, the less they will have time to evoke these trigger questions. And I think that's what happens, is that emotions come out from trigger words,
For sure.
and validation, or validation happens with the person that started it, because they're looking for an argument. And
Yeah.
emotions are, yeah, they're looking for, and as soon as you can, and like what Sean said, if you get too frustrated, you'll say something, and then the person who didn't start it will say something like, well, you're the stupidest person I ever met in my whole life. And they say something that is just off
Hmm.
the cuff because their emotions are really tied up now and they don't know. And then that's the total validation for the other person to go, oh yeah, so that's what you think. And it becomes a whole different thing than it really when it started. Yeah.
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 It explodes. And that's why I said, and that goes back to me saying, if you know how to if you know how to do discussions, or if you want to talk about something, if you want to do what they call feelings that are validated, then you have to do it not on emotion but logical. You can have logical feelings
Hmm.
as opposed to emotional feelings. And I think
Yeah.
more boys to men, and going back to our the group that we had, more boys to men that are taught that will be better at it when they hit the adult world.
Well, for me, one of
and
the
it
things
won't
that I came to
happen.
realize as well is that you're either worth talking to or you're not, right? And if you're worth
Yeah,
talking to, then it's because I want to continue talking to you. So I'm not going to say things to just automatically push you away.
yeah,
Um, if you're not worth talking to, then I'm still not going to say things to push you away. I'm just going to walk away myself.
yeah.
That's the
And
best way.
the trouble is if you get caught in something that you can't walk away from, and that usually happens in when you're in a relationship with another partner. You can't often just walk away from stuff, and that's where everything gets blown out. But I think early discussion, if there was more validation on being take this stigma, especially away from men, saying don't show your emotions, but show them logically. And I'm a believer in
Mhm.
showing your emotions logically. Because I could have had a full blown with the garage door open right on the phone there. I could have come back with emotional. You pulled me out of class. What are you thinking? Like for something stupid, and I could have come up and see that just gives the person that phoned validation to something that they should have thought about
Mhm.
more critically.
Okay. So, what has healing looked for you, looked like for you as a man, and what does it look like today?
For me, healing, um, I like to say that for me, healing is uh, when I see success in the other person's feelings. That's healing for me
Okay.
because I'm a very controlled, me personally, I'm a very controlled, emotional person. And I show a lot of emotions, but I don't show too many negative emotions when I'm in a high negative situation. So for me, success on de-escalating the other person and having them validate their emotions and validate what they are. That brings my heart more solace than anything.
Mhm.
And I think that changed with uh, all of the levels of humans that I had to deal with, from little kindergarten kids to middle school to young adults to adults. And I even had a part in my life where I went into major businesses and I did some de-escalation stuff based around managerial to worker. And I did things like that and to de-escalate because I have an expertise in what they call global management. So global management means how the global look of a business or a classroom is set up. I can often go in and help de-escalate some things just by without even people in there, just by the environment, and how to globally de-escalate some of the things triggers.
Mhm.
So with that being said, I like to see people's emotion come down. Um, and I I one time I was going to Food Basic to get some groceries, and I pulled up into my spot, and I saw these teenage boys about to go at it in a fight. Um, and there was a girl sort of pulling on the arm of one guy and a single guy, and I don't know. I don't have back then. I'm a little smarter now. I didn't have any fear then, so I got in between them. And the girl that was pulling the guy, I went to him first, and um, I put my hand on his chest, which is one method to see how the heart is beating, and it was beating rapidly. And then I looked at the other boy, and I see that there was sort of trepidation to fight. Without even asking anything, I saw it as he looked at her, he saw her and him looking, and it was like that. Can't look at my girl. Let's
Mhm.
let's throw down now, and that's where I went with it. But I de-escalated it by the aggressor because I could feel that heart, and that heart was just pounding to get out, like this physical emotion that he needed to get out for no reason. The girl ended up, I kept them apart. The girl ended up taking her boyfriend away. I stepped to the other guy, and he thanked me. He said, "Thank you. I didn't want to fight."
Mhm.
And it was really smaller than what it should have been. But I really didn't want to fight, and I said I could tell how fast and rapid his heart was going. That he was way above, and I think that's what brings me when the de-escalation of emotions can be more positive. That's
How about you?
yeah.
Um, for me, I mean, you kind of know this about me as well too. Like, I kind of just always go with the thought that like people and things are either helping you or hurting you, and if it's not helping you, and you can find a way out of the situation. So, like, what I mean by that is, if you're surrounded by people who are always negative, you'll notice that they're going to pull you into negative, and the other thing you'll notice is that they will say things that are completely contrary to each other. So they'll hate this person because this person wants to be liked by everybody, and they'll hate this person because this person doesn't care what they think and whatnot. And no matter what the scenario is, no matter what the situation is, they're going to come back with bad and negative, and they're going to pull you into that. And then every conversation, every interaction that you have with them, even though they're not being negative towards you, the conversation has to still be negative. So that person just becomes a dark cloud, and it goes with that person. And then the other conversation that we had earlier, where we a few days back, where we were talking about staying in situations too long, that person just becomes a dark cloud, and then that whole situation with them is that. And you either can, or for me, I can either get them to see that, and if I can't, then that person has to be, basically removed. um, I I keep my friend roster very small, you know that, and I don't mind it being small and smaller and smaller and smaller. So if for me, if somebody or something is just hurting my life, my peace, then it has to go.
Right.
I think we have to remember that there's a there's a small window of in any negative situation, there's fight or flight,
Yeah,
and men are not taught enough about flight in the positive way.
very true.
They've been groomed forever in the fight mode, through all kinds of things that aren't even, talking about, if you talk about family dynamics, sports, everything, a lot of, like, if you take, I love NBA basketball. Like, I'm a big basketball fan. Latanya, you know that from me. I'm a big basketball fan. But if you look, what one thing that bothers me, especially if you watch college level or even high school first, is this: when you do a great play or you do a great slam dunk, you stand over the other guy and you flex and you get,
Hmm.
like, I don't like that part of it because there's that connotation of fight in there all the time, and it's basketball. And if you can leap over a guy and or get around them and make uh, uh, a spinning layup, go off the backboard, or take a 3-point shot, I don't think that's necessary in it. But it's still taught, it's still exemplified in our
Hmm.
young men, and I don't think it's a part of being skilled. And if you go around the NBA and you take a look at past and present, the guys that don't do that, they're pretty good human beings when you hear them talk and stuff like that, and they're great mentors and they do a lot. It's not to say that the others don't, but I think that old value is still, fight or flight is in there, and we're taught through all kinds of things, as men, not
Not
to,
the fight,
and
yeah.
not to fly, not to run.
True.
And there is good flight, but in de-escalation of words and emotions, you can still do it without running away.
Hmm.
Mhm.
and you don't have to fight. You can still with words and with the way
Right.
you deal with things.
Right.
Very true.
So
Oh, you might want to look at the time, Latonya, because
Yeah,
we're
no,
you're probably
I
about
was
to be a
about
wrap
to.
up.
Yeah.
yeah,
Did you have anything else to say before we wrap up, Sean?
For me, no, no.
this has been this has been
No.
awesome. Like I
Thank
Yeah, I'm
you.
so I'm
uh,
so glad that you came
bring
on.
me on for anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I find it interesting. Like I with this whole, men's mental health and everything, I find it interesting to have these conversations because, like I said before, there's things that us women, like, we don't know. I think it's important to hear from you guys. I think
Mhm.
you guys are important as much as we are. We get praised all the time, and
Well, I think we
it's
should have these platforms all the time. It's really good. It was a really good topic to because it's out there. It's not
yeah,
going away, and it infiltrates our lives every day.
yeah, and
Mhm.
And
Sean and I were talking
but
that
if you ever need
people.
if
Mhm.
if you ever need to talk about behavior generally with the types of uh, behaviors and what the four types are and what kind of listeners, because that'll really help solidify this part too, because you have to also know your audience that you're talking to when you talk about emotions. And if you
Exactly.
knew some of the prerequisites of what make up people,
Yeah, yeah.
it's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just that for me, that the curiosity and women that might be listening right now, the curiosity of the mentalness
Yeah,
of men, because you can have a smile on your face, but behind closed doors, what is it
yeah,
really like?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
what are you thinking? Where's your mind at? So, having these types of conversation, I feel that it helps in some sort of
I
way.
think so. I think everybody is entitled to their emotions, and they don't
Yeah,
always have to be negative.
yeah, yeah.
Emotions are a great part of the positive life, also.
100%.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so thank you so much for
Oh,
once again for coming on.
I
And
loved it. Yeah.
yeah, for anyone that's watching and listening, this is what Safe Space is all about. Safe Space Today. We come together and have conversations, and this month is a special month for men's mental health. So stay tuned for our next topic, and take care and have a great night.
All right. Have a great night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks
Have
for
a
Take care.
good
coming on.
night.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Jeff. We'll talk later.
Okay. Bye for now.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you,
Bye bye.
everyone, for watching.